Namaste. Myself Sreya is Menon. Today we are going to discuss about the topic liberalization, privatization and globalization. New economic policies in India is introduced in July 24, 1991. It has been introduced mainly to structure the economy and to improve the balance of payment position of our country. Now we are going to discuss in detail about the LPG, that is liberalization, privatization and globalization. Liberalization was introduced to put an end to the restrictions and open up various sectors of the economy. When government liberalized trade, it means it has removed the tariff, subsidies and other restrictions on the flow of goods and services between the countries. Advantages of liberalization: increase foreign investment. The liberalization has increased the flow of foreign investment towards our country enormously. Increase the foreign exchange reserve. The post reform policies have helped to accumulate more foreign exchange reserves. Till the end of 2002, the foreign exchange reserves had already crossed $68 billion. Reduction in dependence on internal commercial borrowings. Dependence of commercial borrowings has been shifted from internal to external, that is to overseas lender, after the liberalization. Increase in consumption and control over price. Liberalization has removed distortionary taxes which created incentives for labor mobility from a declining sector to inactivity. Disadvantages of liberalization: increase in unemployment. Reform led growth has not generated sufficient employment opportunities in the country. Instead, the removal of taxes and subsidies increased the imports, which thereby increased the level of unemployment in the country. Loss to domestic units. Increase in imports had led to the decline of domestic units. Domestic units are not able to withstand in the market competition on the basis of quality, price, or the use of new technologies. Unbalanced development. Liberalization in trade could lead to an increase in imports in the short run, and this could also cause both trade and current account deficits in the country. Increased dependence on foreign nations. Liberalization can lead to dependency on foreign aid, and this can affect the economy and the policies of the country. It can even make a poor country more poorer. Privatization. It implies shedding of the ownership or management of a government owned enterprise. Selling of part of the equity of the public sector enterprise to the public is known as disinvestment. Advantages of privatization: reduce the burden on government. As part of the public sector is sold out, it reduces the burden on the government. Help profit-making public sector unit to modernize and diversify their business. Government can concentrate more on profit-making public sector, and also the investment from the private sector helps in diversifying the business. Help the sick units which are liability of the public sector. By selling the equities of the sick units, the government can pool more private sector investments for its betterment. Industrial growth. Due to more private sector investment, the growth of the industries has been increasing. Disadvantages of privatization: lack of welfare. As the ownership has been transferred from public to private sector, the motive also changes from welfare to profit. Less transparency. Private companies are less transparent than government, so for the drive for profit, it can be a breeding ground for corruption. High cost on consumers. Even though it is promoted that it reduces consumer cost, still with the profit motive, the cost will be higher. Inflexibility. As governments sign decade-long contracts with the private sector, and sometimes the private company make it attractive only to win the contract for its profit motive. Globalization. Globalization can be simply said as the rapid integration between two or more countries. It is an outcome of the set of various policies that are aimed at transforming the world towards greater interdependence and integration. Advantages of globalization: free flow of capital and increase in the total capital employed. As there are no barriers and with more integration, there is free flow of capital and increase in the total capital employed. Larger markets. Globalization opens up new opportunities for businesses to sell their goods and services to a much larger market, which means more potential sales and greater profits. Earnings change. For businesses looking to take advantage of the opportunities offered by the globalization, this can include by paying lower salaries and having lower overheads when they operate in less developed nations. Other savings can be made in countries that have more favorable taxation and business costs. Increase in jobs and income. There has been an increase in jobs and income as the global workforce could work from anywhere in the world with an internet connection. Disadvantages of globalization. Inequality. Globalization has been linked to rising inequalities in income and wealth. This leads to political and social tensions and financial instability that will constrain growth. Many of the world's poorest people do not have access to basic technologies and public goods. They are excluded from the benefits. Inflation. Strong demand for food and energy has caused a steep rise in commodity prices. Food price inflation has placed millions of the world's poorest people at great risk. Threat to environment. Irreversible damage to ecosystems, land degradation, deforestation, loss of biodiversity, and the fear of a permanent shortage of water afflict millions of the world's most vulnerable. Unemployment. Concern has been expressed by some that the capital investment and jobs in advanced economies will drain away to developing countries as firms switch their production to countries with lower unit labor costs. This can lead to higher level of structural unemployment. Standardization. Some critics of globalization point to a loss of economic and cultural diversity as giant firms and global multinational brands dominate domestic markets in many countries. So, as to conclude, Jeffrey Sachs pointed out that the reform process in India has a long way to go. Economic reforms can only be successful in India through the combined effort of people, political parties, bureaucracy, and the government.